Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, the podcast of the highest ceiling. I'm Bryce Hendricks, joined always by the great Cooper Klein. R.I.P. Stone Hansen. Just kidding. He's alive. He's just working. He's working hard, and sadly, we were not able to get him on today. But we're trying to keep the weekly thing going. It's hard. I'm working like 80 hours a week, and Coop and Stone are both working all the time too. So we're all busy and living life. But this is something I've been really excited for. We were trying to figure out how to fit this in. And we figured since we didn't have, you're going to have to cut that out. Since we didn't have the time to have the three of us on to do a redraft, it's time to start thinking a little bit. We're about 2 weeks away. As you guys listen, it's going to be like 8 days, I think 9 days from the start of the season. So we are going to have two pods that are NBA focused in terms of the past two drafts. We're going to talk about the 2024 draft, these guys entering their sophomore season in the NBA. We're going to talk about the 2025 draft and some rookie predictions. Hopefully Stone will be on for the rookie predictions one because he's definitely going to have a lot to say there. But I've been very excited to re-examine some soon to be sophomores, what their roles are going to look like, looking back at my board 1 year in and talking a little bit about the process of reevaluating a board with having done some of the redraft exercises, because I do think that's interesting. But before we get too into the specifics, I'm very excited. So I'm like getting ahead of myself. But Coop, my friend, how you doing?
Doing well. Weather's getting cold up here in the Northeast, finally. Really enjoying it. Every single day I check the weather app in Houston and it's 90 plus degrees, and I get to go outside and it's 45, 50, and I'm loving life right now. I might be changing my tune when winter comes and I'm freezing to death, but for now I'm really enjoying myself, and I'm really excited about this. I feel like this was a draft that was just very maligned, fairly in some ways, because I mean we'll talk about the first couple of picks, but there's a lot of talent here. We're going to talk about a lot of guys who are going to play major NBA minutes and a lot of guys who are going to contribute to real winning here in a really interesting way. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think this is a draft that we might look back on as not one of the stronger drafts in terms of top end talent, but a really interesting draft in terms of the guys that have been drafted that are going to be on teams that are good for stretches of their career and actually playing for those teams. And that's going to be a really fun topic as we get there. For what it's worth, Coop, I've become winter pilled, partially to during winter I can avoid the impending dread of the climate apocalypse, but also because it's basketball season, and I enjoy the cold weather. I enjoy the hot cocoa, and I enjoy basketball. So, but let's start with the great Reed Sheppard. And Reed Sheppard was someone we were both really high on. Coop, you're going to have to remind me if you had him at 1. I ended up with him at 3. In my mind's eye, for some reason, I remembered having him at 1, but I didn't. I had him at 3 behind Isaiah Collier and Matas Buzelis. And I still stand by most of my pre-draft evaluation. His rookie season was obviously, nothing to write home about. Played 52 games, started only 3, only played about 12 minutes per game, only averaged 4 points on 35.1, 33.8, 37 or 81.3 shooting splits. Wasn't crazy efficient as like a playmaker, though a 2-to-1 assist to turnover is solid. But Fred VanVleet's been injured. The Rockets are competing for a championship, I would say. I think that's fair to say, with Kevin Durant, Naaman Thompson, and Alperen Şengün as guys that are all kind of a core to build around. Coop, what's it going to look like for number 3 overall pick, Reed Sheppard, this year?
Well, they've had a lot of belief in him, despite the fact that he was not very good as a rookie. Everything that's come out of the camp that's not just bogus or filler, or we like all of our guys, or we think Jalen Green is the best player on the team a week before trading him. All the stuff that's real is just how much they love him, how much they love his production at Kentucky. They love his work ethic. They love his defense, which I know is something that people will talk about and be like, oh, he can't start because he's a bad defender. He started both preseason games One, when the whole team was healthy. Other than Dorian Finney-Smith, but in the second game, everybody who I would consider a contender to start, other than Dorian Finney-Smith, was healthy and available, and he was still starting. They moved Tari Eason to the bench, which I think works out for them. You want a guy like that coming in and completely changing the tide of a game. You have a ton of rebounding with Amen and Şengün out there already, Jabari Smith. But they really desperately need Reed shooting. And he's just looked so much more confident. He's been given the ability to really bring the ball up, get into his sets, he's driving. This was a guy who couldn't handle the ball last season. He couldn't dribble as a backup point guard. But you saw even last year, he had his game versus OKC where he was the starter and he dropped 25, 3, and 5 against the eventual champions, an efficient 25. He was getting downhill. He was getting to the mid-range. You've seen the flashes from this guy. And I really think as a rookie, it was all mental. It was all they were sending him up and down between the main team and the G League. And he just looked out of it. He also was used to coming off the bench. He played half as many games. He only plays 30 games in college. There's so many different factors. And also, he's just a smaller point guard with a rougher handle. But now that he's kind of been given the keys, the organization has showed their confidence in him. Obviously, it's just preseason, but this is a guy who I think it was always just mental. And he's moving off ball. He's filling the corner when there's a driver so they can make the corner skip. He's, spacing the floor. He's setting screens. He's bringing the ball up. These are all the things. These are the reasons why we loved him, because he can both do some ball handling, but the Rockets don't need him to. They have Kevin Durant, who's the best, 6'10" ball handler in the world. They have Amen, who's one of the most athletic ball handlers in the world. Şengün's got an advanced ball handle at like 6'9". If he's your third or fourth best ball handler and also an elite shooter and all this stuff, I think that's just something that they really value and need from the backcourt spot. He's also generating a ton of steals, which he's always been good at. He's not a great on-ball defender, but he even looks better than he was last season in that regard. His feet look quicker. He looks a lot less stuck in the mud. I think a lot of it is his form. He looks a lot more comfortable defending like a normal human being, getting down into a stance, sliding with guys, and using more of his strength, not just like relying on somebody beats him and then he can nab a quick steal. So I've really, since, I kind of thought that the Fred VanVleet injury would really simplify the offense, but it's really looked like, you don't have Fred to lean on, so you have to actually run offensive sets. They're using Jabari Smith coming off of pin downs. They're using Reed coming off of pin downs. They're using motion, elevator screens. They're running grenade actions. Like, there's so much stuff that they're actually able to do, and Reed's offensive versatility really empowers that. And I think him knowing that, the coaches really believing in him, giving him that starting spot, was the best thing that could have happened for him. So I'm obviously Homer, but I've been really excited with what Reed showed, even if, the shot isn't. He did it in Summer League, too. This isn't just like, oh, well, it's 2 preseason games. He's confident. He knows what he needs to do, and he's doing it.
Yeah, so, I have no reason to not believe in Reed for his rookie season. I think that's definitely an overreaction. Would it have been nice to see him contribute a little bit more, sure, but this team was the 3 seed in the West last year, like a very good 2 seed in a great Western Conference last year, right? Like, I don't necessarily put a lot on him in terms of not playing. If he had been on the Wizards, he would have played a zillion minutes last year and probably won Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. The concerns for me that are still there are definitely not defense. I think all defensive concerns with Reed are always off base, and I honestly think are often based on the fact that he's a white guy, which as a white guy who's bad at defense, I understand. But I do think that they've always been overplayed. He's always been a really good nail defender who can really close out. And, he could be definitely kind of boom or bust defensively in terms of if he makes the play, it's great. If he doesn't, he's out of the play. But the truth is, he's 6'1", that's going to happen. Like, that's just how it is for small guys a lot if you're not like some real true lockdown guy, which he's not. And that can obviously be tough, but this Rockets team, it's not like they're desperate for point of attack defense. And most teams most teams, the truth is, don't have their point guard defending the other team's point guard. Like, that's basketball. Jalen Brunson is not guarding Trae Young and vice versa. That's just not how basketball is. The concern for me is he like a truly elite shooter, or is he just a good one? Because that's the difference between a solid rotation player and like probably a lower end all-star type player. I don't think there's like superstar upside with Reed, and I never have necessarily. I actually thought he probably had the second highest upside in the draft last year in terms of like reaching that top end potential behind Buzelis. But I find myself thinking that he's just going to be more of like a good high-end rotation player who can start. Like, I'm not saying he can't be a starter, but the shot is really the difference there, because he's not like, he's a point guard in size, but I did something I never do, Coop. I watched some preseason basketball to prepare for this, and for the most part, they had Amen bringing the ball up. Not that Reed never did, and specifically in transition he would, but if like there was a dead ball or the other team made a shot, it was very rarely Reed bringing the ball up. He was playing mostly as like an off ball with the top group. It was different when the other starters were out and it was Reed and a bench group, right? Then he would bring the ball up more. But with the top group, he wasn't bringing the ball up much. He's more of like an off-ball spacer mover type. And he's really like, him and KD right now are really the only like true plus shooters in that top group. I think Jabari Smith has his moments, assuming he's going to start. But I think the thing for him is this year having to get thrown into the fire. When the idea was he's a backup point guard, I think there was a little bit more like, okay, like he can continue to come along on this timeline behind Fred VanVleet. And then when Fred is ready to hand the keys over and probably, right around the end of Reed's rookie contract, he's going to be ready for the big time. Well, now he doesn't have that luxury anymore. And so what's that going to look like? That's really a question. I'm super interested. The Rockets are maybe the team I'm most excited to watch this year, and that's not just because of you, Coop. It's because this is a fascinating team that's trying to find this balance of, we want to win a championship this year, but also there's a chance that this can be one of the teams that's competing with like the Thunder for team of the second half of the decade. Right. And so balancing that is super interesting. If this team is going to be a championship contender for years on out, like in the post KD, post VanVleet time, Reed is going to be a big part of that, because they're not going to get another bite at this top 5 pick apple. The thing that I am really interested to see is how his transition passing looks this year, with how up tempo, like him and Ahmed want to play, but how low tempo KD and Şengün and to an extent Jabari Smith want to play. Are they going to mix in lineups where it's those two and Tari and like Clint Capella that'll play like a little bit faster maybe, or even Steven Adams, even though he's not going to run the floor, like you're getting a shot and then Steven Adams is there to crash the glass or whatever. Because like that was his, for me, other than his just like natural feel, his best like tangible skill coming in as a draft prospect, was his transition passing. And I just don't know. I worry that we're not going to see that a ton. I think this is going to end up being a pretty deliberate starting lineup for the Rockets, even though, arguably their most important young talent is someone who should be playing in an up-tempo system. So I really do wonder what the balance that looks like. But yeah, my expectations for Reed are still similar. I think this is a guy that's going to contribute in the playoffs eventually in his career. And it just sounds like it's going to happen earlier than expected. And I think there's going to be some growing pains and some learning curves. But the truth is, even if he's not putting up big numbers or anything, if he's still a starter at the end of the year, this was a really successful sophomore season for Reed. So, Coop, do you have any final things on him before we move on here?
I will say that the transition basketball has looked a lot more impressive than I was expecting. I was expecting a lot of just like Amen getting a steal at the point of attack or, on the wing, and he'd just be out running alone. there's been a lot more Şengün running the floor. There's been a lot more Tari, obviously always going to run the floor. Jabari's run the floor pretty hard. And Reed's been, pretty good. He hasn't had any, like his crazy behind the back pass from last season where he, throws it the length of the court to Tari or anything. But he makes the right pass. He goes in. He has just such a great nose for the ball that when a play breaks down, they're really able to dive on it. He can just make the right plays. He's such a quick processor. And that was something I actually talked about. I go on my friend Robert Land's podcast if you want to watch some Houston sports stuff. But I always go on for Rockets. And we were really wondering what the transition is going to look like without Jalen Green. Because for all his faults, that guy can run. He can run really fast and he can throw down cool dunks. But it looks like they're really making a concerted team effort to run the floor this season. Even if they're not going all out and like streaking down the floor the second it looks like they could get the ball, they're just playing smarter, which I think is always better because the transition, as much as you've wanted to run it the last few years, it's just looked really rough in a lot of ways because guys are going down and missing contested layups or, just trying to force the issue instead of working as a team, making the right pass. We saw that Tari Eason will dish in transition to Şengün for the slam on Kevin Love. Like, there's stuff there. And I'm really, a lot of my complaints from last postseason and just last season in general have been addressed already. And I think Reed fixes so many of them. So I'm really, really hopeful, and I hope he continues to play ball the right way.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Rookie of the Year. Steph Castle is someone who I think as a pod collectively we ended up really low on. But for whatever reason, I do feel like I was the biggest Steph Castle hater of the group. I had him at 21. Do you remember where you had him, Coop?
I had him at 18. So you did beat me there. I can check where Stone had him, but I feel like it was around where he liked him more than both of us.
I think Stone liked him a little bit more. I believe so. At least in the pod. Then again, we do this all the time where like Stone like gives the positive sell and then it's like, oh yeah, actually I had him 25, and it's like, oh okay. But
I love when we do that. It's beautiful.
Steph Castle won Rookie of the Year, but I think he is already starting to be one of the more frustrating discourse players in the NBA. I hate to say overrated. Like, that's not really fair to Steph. Like, he didn't do anything other than play his best, whatever, right? Like, I'm sure he's a hardworking guy. But he averaged 14.7 points, 4 assists, 3.7 rebounds on 42.8, 28.5, 72 shooting splits. 47.6 effective field goal percentage is not particularly good. The way I would put it is he was probably the most damaging offensive player in the league down the stretch last year, which is, was good for the Spurs. That's why they ended up with Dylan Harper. But all of a sudden now he's in this really weird roster situation where he wants to be a point guard, but De'Aaron Fox is on the team, so he's not going to be a point guard. Dylan Harper is also probably at his best with the ball in his hands. And none of those three are particularly good shooters. De'Aaron Fox can make shots, right? He's okay. Steph Castle is an actively very bad shooter. It is also, not I wouldn't say a great decision maker, right? 4.1 assists to 2.2 turnovers is not bad, but, had a fairly high turnover rate, and, 4 turnovers per 100 possessions is not exactly something you're hoping for. That's a 13.4 turnover percentage. It's just, it's quite a bit, in my opinion. The thing for me with Castle is I've always thought he was maybe a little bit it was overstated how elite he was defensively. And I do think that has shown out some in his rookie season where he kind of had more of an offensive slanted rookie year. And I really worry that he's going to end up on the out somehow in San Antonio. Because I wasn't the biggest Dylan Harper guy, but I do think Dylan Harper is a much, much better prospect than Castle. And I think the fit is going to be so rough with Castle and Fox and Harper. I made this argument over the summer. If it was me, I would have looked to trade Castle right now because I think this is when his value is highest. I would have pulled the Sam Hinkie and traded the rookie of the year when his value is really high because it's not that it's not that I don't believe he's an NBA player. I do, but I just think that he is in this really weird kind of like almost DeJounte Murray-esque, like, what does it look like on a really good team? And is he even a good enough floor raiser for bad teams to be super worthwhile there? I'm just not sure. I actually think that's maybe like the closest quote unquote player comp for him that I can think of. But I think DeJounte was probably a better passer than Castle. And has become a pretty plus shooter in terms of his like mid-range efficiency and such. I don't know that I see that with Castle. I'm just not actually sure what the star outcomes look like here. Like he's not some like elite driver. Like he has some cool dunks and he's a good vertical athlete, but he's not like the handle isn't crazy. His inability to shoot really hurts him, and he's not some like super high level playmaker. So I think he's kind of in this weird middle zone, and I think he's going to struggle to be the defensive stalwart on good teams because he wants the ball in his hands at least a little bit, and he isn't a good enough shooter or off-ball player at all. Like, I think last year to me, in this when I watched the Spurs, it kind of confirmed to me that a lot of his cutting feel was just as much UConn's system as it was Steph Castle being a great cutter. Like, I don't think he's like crazy high feel on either end. I don't think he is a great passer, and I don't think he's a good enough shooter. And so, even though he won Rookie of the Year, I find myself in this weird situation where I just don't know how to value him. He's obviously better than the 21st player in the class, right? Like that was too low, and I'll take that because he's going to have an NBA career. But I do think some people are maybe too quick to victory lap this and fans of the Spurs specifically, because even though he won Rookie of the Year, the reason he won Rookie of the Year is that he played 81 games and he scored 15 points, not because he was actually good. And so I'm not particularly high on Steph. I have not really changed my pre-draft evaluations much, and I hope I'm wrong. Like I want him to be like a good shooter and contribute that way because I really don't want him to be like this floor raising guy with the ball in his hands or whatever. Or, really, Lord forbid, this is this 2.0 of Michael Carter Williams, as we've kind of danced around that name a couple times. But that's kind of where my head goes, where this was a really bad draft in the sense of these were bad rookies. Only one or maybe two of these rookies I would say were actually like positive NBA players last year. And even one of those guys, Jalen Wells, like was not good for the whole stretch of the season. Like he definitely hit a wall halfway through the year, which is part of why he got passed up for Rookie of the Year. So I don't know, Coop. I'm probably rambling. Where are you at with Steph Castle? Am I too low? Am I crazy for this? How'd you react to his rookie year? And try to take your San Antonio hate hat off.
I'll try my hardest, but I'm a lot actually more hopeful for him long term, almost because of the Dylan Harper acquisition. I think that the way that I approached him as a prospect and just long term is that all of his best plays, all of his best passes are as an off-ball athlete who you can scheme stuff for. He's not that good of a shooter, so he can cut backdoor really well, and he is a pretty good screener, and he knows how to roll, and he's a good enough athlete to be like an undersized roll man who can make enough passes to kind of like be this connecting wing. And with the really weird, San Antonio's just a really weirdly constructed team where I almost feel like they've got something there with the spacing fives. They overused Wemby as a popper. They got Luke Cornett. They have these like spacing fives and big forwards. And then, you have Fox, who's just, you have to guard out to 3-point range, because if you don't and you just play the drive, he's going to punish you. I don't think he can play with Dylan Harper because Harper is just not the shooter that any of those guys are. But I think if you can get him to be like a roller and a cutter, like an almost Zion James plus type of player, I think that's a really good basketball player. I think that's a really interesting guy. Is that the 4th overall pick and the Rookie of the Year and all this stuff? I don't think so. But I think that was like what he actually did well at UConn. And then, you just look at a guy like that and it kind of reminds you of like Scotty Barnes syndrome, where you see super cool passing and interior scoring and you go, oh, that's a point guard because he passes and he dribbles a little bit. But the situations in which he's passing and dribbling are not what point guards do. So I'm kind of hopeful in a weird way, but I also really worry that there's like Jeremy Sohan, who's just like better at defense and better at cutting and bigger and a better finisher. And I'd have to check the stats, but I feel like he's a better shooter off the top of my head. And Dylan Harper, who's just a better prospect, who I would rather, like, if I have to commit resources to Harper or Castle, I'm going with Harper 10 times out of 10. That kind of guy is just so much more necessary for what the Spurs want to do long term. And I agree with you. I don't like, if this season doesn't go well, he's lost, at least 50% of his value. You could get multiple first round picks and interesting prospects for Stephon Castle after this season. Everyone is so in on him, rookie of the year, future superstar, but every single good play to me was a schemed cut or him benefiting off of Wembanyama's insane gravity and the fact that you have to double him and the fact that he can dribble.
Or they came in the meaningless parts of the season.
And then then he's throwing 15 turnovers a game. And it's like you're playing, the Portland Trailblazers who don't give a shit about winning basketball games, and like you're just getting killed. And I'm hopeful because I want to see him as this off-ball wing, but this commitment to being a point guard has always been like the biggest turnoff for me with him. So I don't know. I would really like to see him be a 3 or a big 2, but the Spurs are going to spur.
Yeah, but that's my thing is even as a 2 and 3, like I'm just not sure that he's. I don't know.
If he could shoot, like if he could really shoot or like even just hit spot ups, I'd be so much more confident.
He has to be a 2, and he has to be the type of 2 that's like your guard the ball 2. And I'm also just not quite sure that he's that level of like on ball stopper for him to be elite. Like he got the Drew Holiday comps, and that shit always pissed me off. Like
the thing is that he's a great vertical athlete, right? He has the aesthetic athlete bias where he's not like truly an overwhelming athlete in that way. Like I think him and Reed are really opposites in that way. Obviously Reed's white, but like Reed is like this really slept on athlete in a lot of weird ways. And Castle is like this very traditional athlete who's not a great mover in a lot of the smaller ways that Reed is. And I think that kind of perception difference is really interesting.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's fair. Let's talk about let's move on to someone who I'm another guy that I think we were all pretty high on. I ended up with him at 4. But let's talk about Alex Sarr, who had a really interesting rookie year. I would say was probably the most hyped rookie, even though he didn't go number 1. I was telling Coop before the pod, I literally forgot who got drafted number 1. I thought it was Alex Sarr, and then I looked back at this draft and I realized it wasn't. It was another Frenchman who we'll talk about eventually, I'm sure, even though I don't think we actually have much to say. But Sarr was like the least efficient, like worst big ever offensively for like the first stretch of last year. And he still ended the year with like the same effective field goal rate as Steph Castle, even worse, 45.7, only averaged 13 points. Didn't shoot well for 30.8%, but he did take 5 per game. The real thing that kills him is he shot 45% on 2s, which if you go back and listen to our Alex Sarr pod, my biggest concern with him was that he was so soft inside, and it wasn't just a skinny thing. It was like a soft thing that it actually like it made me want to be lower on him than I ended up. Like I just could not stand watching him. But Coop, I want to get your takeaways from what you kind of saw in his rookie year. Obviously, he was not on a Wizards team that was very serious. Jordan Poole and half a season of Kyle Kuzma got the majority of the shots for that team. Just tell me, how'd you feel about his rookie year? What are your expectations, here on out?
Well, I think this is actually what we talked about in his episode was if he goes to the right team where he can be a rolling big and be treated as a big, he's awesome. If he can get shots created for him, he's really cool. But if you're going to treat him as this creator, it's going to take a long time because the creation stuff is so raw. It kind of is like the same as Castle, where it's like you see these flashes of him being a secondary player, and you're like, oh, that's a primary. And it's like, no, this is not this is not a primary ball handler shot creating, you know, Kevin Durant regen. You know, this isn't Kristaps Porzingis. Let's cool the jets a little bit. There's some cool handle flashes, but for him, the handle flashes are best utilized as a short roll guy. That he needs to be getting to the mid range as a counter, not as like his primary attack on the rim. And I don't know. I'm really disappointed, but also like the Wizards are the Wizards, and there wasn't a single person who could pass the ball to him and get him set up. And I'm even more discouraged because now he's going to be playing with, Trey Johnson and Cam Whitmore and Bilal Coulibaly at all times. And those are the guys who are going to, I really think, like, they're going to score the ball more efficiently than he does. It's just kind of a fact. And maybe that'll mean that they have to treat him as like an outlet. And that'll be really good for his development. And he'll kind of get to scale back into being a big. But I'm also worried that the reason he didn't go one is because he told Atlanta, I want to be the guy, so don't draft me, But if he was in Atlanta instead of Ricochet, we'd be having a completely different conversation about him because he'd be catching lobs from Trae Young and hitting trail threes for a team that's good in transition. And I don't know. It's just really – I'm pretty disappointed for the guy who I had number one on my board. I was really, really high on Sarr. He wasn't in a tier of his own or anything, but I really bought the athleticism. I really bought the handle flashes, some of the outside scoring stuff, and the touch, really. And I've been pretty let down, but I'm hoping that some of that Washington Devil magic can do something for him and get him going, because I'm pretty in the dumps after seeing him be the least efficient big man in NBA history.
Yeah, I'm concerned that it's not going to get much better this year. It's not like they grabbed any guards that are going to put him in better situations. I still agree that this is a bet at the right type of player. I think we've continued to see that an offensive cheat code, if you can figure it out, is a big that can both pop and roll. Miles Turner, Kristaps Porzingis, like there's a reason those guys are the bigs on championship teams. And again, I don't want to over fetishize stretch bigs, but I also don't want to under emphasize the importance of having this kind of guy who can be a good defender, who can actually make shots, who can also be okay on the inside when they're set up. But yeah, he's not some creative. This is not Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid. And the sooner people can accept that, the better. Alex Sarr, and he's not Victor Wembanyama, right? I think that's really probably what everyone was hoping. Oh, he's French, and in playing against OTE, he had like a couple crossovers or whatever. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, he is someone who should be like a slightly better, more efficient Miles Turner in time. It was like, man, this is someone who can really go crunch a lob. He's a good, probably not like elite rim protector. He makes shots. He can put the ball on the ground enough that, he can attack and close out if you're going to keep a big on him, and he's going to just try to run him off. And he can run some DHOs and do some other things. Like, I said Miles Turner. He could maybe the argument is more like a bigger, more athletic Wendell Carter, like whatever, like because he can kind of do some stuff with the ball and make some decisions, right? Like, I still think that guy's in there. But yeah, the Wizards eventually have got to get a point guard. Like this guy needs a point guard more than most players. Like there's not a lot of post gravity here. There's not a lot of isolation gravity or anything like that. That's not who he is. And so I'm hopeful, but I think this year's probably going to be pretty bad too. And I worry sometimes that, man, 2 bad years, the gears can start to turn a little bit in the wrong way, right? Like, we'll see, but that's definitely the concern for me.
Can I
Coop,
jump
do you
in
have some
here
more?
real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Last on SAR, I think he's really a really interesting test case on the idea of flashes. Like SAR was a guy who was all like his top end prospectum for most people was built on flashes. But this was stuff he was doing once or twice a game. You know, we had this discussion, I think, last year or the year before, that flashes are cool, but you cannot build a prospect out of flashes. You can build some like, oh, here's some interesting development pathways. There's some cool stuff maybe in the long-term future, but you can't just be a prospect off of flashes, things you do once or twice a game. Prospectum is built off of the things you do 15 to 20 times a game. Prospectum is built on rolling. Prospectum is built on scoring at the interior. It's setting screens. It's what can you consistently do? And the disconnect between what SAR consistently did that made him cool, to me, why I had him number one, which was talented, mega athletes, you know, some of this like Clint Capella as a prospect surrounding stuff that could make him an elite roller with some pop equity was so much different than the flashes of, oh, he hit a pull-up three against, you know, the 58th ranked center in the country who played at OTE, who was also 2 years younger than him. Like, these are such different things, and I think that that's where the discussion needs to be, not around, oh, he only had a 45% effective field goal rating because he stinks. He's awful. But it's like, where was the divide? Why was there such a big difference? And I think that's something we can always do a better job at, but just the community in general also needs to do a better job at. You're asking me to pick somebody else here who I want to talk about. I'm going to pick the second guy on my board, Ron Holland, someone who I know you were a little lower on, which surprised me because 19-year-old Bryce would have had Ron Holland at 1 because he was 6'6" and athletic, and it would have been awesome.
It would not have been. I would have had him at 1 tier of his own. I would have said this is the next Dev of the Cell, positively. Like it's like a big pat on his back. Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, we would have been. You and I would have run circles around everyone else about why he's so good.
For what it's worth, on Holland, I know you're gonna have a lot to say. I just want to say quickly. Another guy that was on a team that wanted to win. So, you know, he did play in 81 games and he averaged 15 minutes per game. Like, he was not like a non-factor for them. But the big thing is he only shot 23.8% from three, 51.7 effective field goal rate's pretty good. He was really efficient 2-point scorer, 6 points. But the steal and block rates, which are always kind of the sell for him, are okay. 1.9 steal, 1.3 block, like okay. I want to hear your sell because for me, he ended up at 8, which was I think lower than I expected. And my thing was I thought he wasn't quite as good defensively as he needed to be, and so I thought that was a huge hindrance on him. Are you still as high on him, Coop? Do you still think he's the number 2 guy or close to that level in this class?
I'd probably have him number 2, but I think I'd have him behind Reed at this point. I think at their worst, Reed is still better. When Ron was bad this season, Reed was a worse player and still more of a winning basketball player. I think my thing with him was always that the defense was shit because he was asked to carry the world's most enormous offensive load because G League Ignite wasn't set up to actually make guys look like what is this guy going to be as a prospect and what's he going to actually do. It was, hey, go out there, do whatever the hell you want, and hopefully you'll go top 5 because a bad team will pick you high. The Jonathan Kuminga special. It wasn't, what are you going to do to actually win basketball games? And I think Ron going to a pretty solid team in Detroit, a team where he has to play winning basketball or he's not going to see the floor, was the best thing for him. He gets to go play next to Cade and get easy buckets at the rim. He gets to act as a driver. If the shot can come around at all, I think this is like a pretty high level starter. I think the defense has been a lot better than it was in OTE. I don't think he's like some lockdown guy, but he's everywhere. He's just such a good athlete. The motor is so high. He tries so hard. And with the amount of bricks that Detroit can throw up sometimes, you just need a guy like Ron who can go attack the boards from the corner, play as a bench version of Ozar. And Ozar's given him great production. Like he was really good after the blood clot stuff, and just someone that they so desperately need with their style of offense. And with a guy like Cade who can just really hit cutters, really sees the floor so well, really demands so much attention. So I think he went to the perfect situation, and I'm a lot higher on him than I would be otherwise because of the situation he's in. So I'm still really high on Ron.
For what it's worth, I missed hard on Osar. He is awesome, really awesome basketball player. Coop, that's a huge shout out to you. That was one where I definitely I overrated the OTE context and hating him in that context. And I could recognize Ahmed was such a good athlete and so smart that I overlooked the context. But I think with Osar, I was like, this is such bad basketball. I'm gonna fade him, and that was bad. That was bad by me. I think the good with being on the Pistons for Holland is I still think his path is again, I hate the term boomer bust or whatever, but I kind of think he has to be like a secondary, tertiary scorer. He can't be like your fifth guy offensively. He has to do some stuff with the ball in his hands, because I just don't think he's that level of defender, and that hasn't changed. And he's not. The truth is, even if he was close to that, he's not going to pass up Asar for that role. And so it's good that he's at a place that actually needs another person to handle the ball a little bit, especially if that guy can be a 2-3 and they can just play these huge lineups. But he has to make shots. I think for him to really maximize what he is, he has to make shots, and that's still the question for me. But this is the rare case where he kind of has a bad rookie year, or at least like a whatever rookie year, and I do leave more encouraged on this end of things. I think he was a better actual basketball player in his minutes than I expected in my career. I thought he was going to be a really bad rookie. The fact that he was a competent guy, even though he didn't play a ton, this is one of those things where my viewing on how we should do all rookie teams or whatever is so different than other. This dude played in 81 games on a good team and wasn't a huge horrendous negative in his minutes. That's a top 14 guy, top 10 guy, in a rookie class this bad. He wasn't a yay points guy, but I'm encouraged. I think I still stand by I had him 8. I still think that's about the range for me. I think if he breaks into the top 5 in a redraft, it's because he's that borderline all-star level of player, and I'm still just not sure I see that. So I think it makes the fit tougher, but he's fun. He's fun nonetheless. All right, I think we should each pick one more guy that we liked that we want to talk about, and then we should pick at least one person who we were low on, who maybe had a good or better rookie year than we expected, and then we should probably do some rapid fire. So I want to talk about someone who I think is going to have a huge year. And this is kind of pulling this one from the logo, but I think this guy's in for a really big sophomore season. That's Jalen Tyson with the Cleveland Cavaliers, 20th overall pick. I had Tyson at 5. I thought this is a guy who is, he's 6'6". He barely played as a rookie. Played in 47 games. 10 minutes per game, and was not very good. Just he was, sub 50 effective field goal rate, sub 4 points, basically an even assist to turnover. Was not great. Just a fact. He was not great as a rookie. I think this is a team that needs Jalen Tyson. I think it's the perfect situation for him. Max Juice is going to miss the beginning of the season. Lonzo Ball will not play back-to-backs. He might miss the beginning of the season. And they lost Ty Jerome. They need a secondary ball handler on the bench, and they lost Karis LeVert too. They need that secondary ball handler on the bench. I think that's what Jalen Tyson is. He's a 2-guard who can handle, who can make shots. He's not a great defender, but I think he can be competent enough defensively. I'm not as sure about the star outcomes. I thought this was a guy who maybe had some star outcomes, but I think this is a guy who's going to contribute in his sophomore season to a really good team. And if he doesn't this year, that's going to probably, put the nail in the coffin for him a little bit. It's obviously still early, but this is age 23 season. Like, he's not young. And so if he's going to be relied on for minutes this year and he's just really bad, well, then he's probably not long for the league, just the truth. But I think he's going to have a good year. Like, there's just not a lot of guys that are this solid as ball handlers that can make shots that are this big and are fine, decision makers who are going to have opportunities on really good teams to have the ball. Like, he's going to play with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who are two of the best guys you could possibly be playing with in terms of, running DHOs and pick and rolls with these guys. He's going to have Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell next to him for a lot of his minutes. It's guys that can really set him up, who can be, elite spacers and gravity wells for him when he's attacking a second side. You still have some concerns about, is he an elite enough athlete? But this is a guy that I still think there is some pathways to being like a really high level player. He was just on a really good team last year that didn't need him to be that. And even if he's not quite to that level, like, this is a guy that I think could really contribute to a playoff rotation. I think he's up for a big sophomore year. This is one of those, like, if I had to pick one guy who's going to be the quote unquote surprise breakout from this draft this season, it's Jalen Tyson. This is I'll stamp my flag on it. I've loved Jalen Tyson since I first watched him last year. I had him probably about as high as any. I can't imagine. I think Stone and I both had him at 5. I can't imagine many people had him higher than Stone and I. I was about as high as you could be on him. I really believe in this guy. Really, really strongly believe in Tyson. And I think that this is the year where we're going to find out, was my evaluation sound? I think once he's pushing age 24, 25 seasons, if he hasn't clicked by then, it's probably not going to click in the way it needs to. And I think he's going to have the opportunity to do it this year on a team that needs it. So, Coop, do you have any thoughts on Tyson? And if not, you can move on to your next guy.
Yeah, it's just hard because Tyson didn't play much last season, but I had him at 8. I had him about second highest in the entire world behind you and Stone. I really like him. I think this is a guy who can play with Garland, can play with Mitchell, can fill either guard spot, just play hard. And I think kind of gives you a facsimile of what you want from Lonzo Ball, kind of, in that, like, can run some point guard, can also be a bit of a connector. Maybe he's like a stronger connector, but this is a guy who can, with Jarrett Allen, who's one of the best screeners in the world, can run a pick and roll and actually get you some good looking shots, and can also just spot up and play good defense. I'll talk about him real quick because I like Matas Buzelis as well, but I think this is one of the more interesting guys in the class. I had him at 7. I think you had him at 2 or 1. 2. Okay. This guy is awesome. Just like the athleticism translates so well. He can attack closeouts if he does draw closeouts. I got to pull up his stats real quick because I don't think he shot the ball particularly well.
I have him right here.
Okay.
So he played in 81 games, averaged 8 points on 45.4, 36.1, 81.5 shooting splits, had a 54.1% effective field goal rate. His stats got better when he started starting. He started 31 games. Now, that was the dog days of the year. So again, take what you will. But to me, this was the most impressive rookie last year. Maybe it wasn't the best. I thought he was the most impressive rookie. Is that something you agree with, Coop?
I was maybe more impressed by some of the offensive stuff Edey did, but like for what I expected, I knew Edey was going to come in and do bullshit on offense and just like smother people because that's what he's always done. But Buzelis, compared to what I expected, was the most interesting. I didn't know he shot 36% on threes, even if they were mostly catch and shoots. That's awesome. That's a legit 6'10 guy with legit fluidity, legit defensive upside. I mean, who can really do stuff. I mean, shooting 36% on threes means you're already better than Patrick Williams. So I'm pretty happy with Buzelis's rookie campaign. I'm really excited to see him this season. Hopefully he'll be a full-time starter. And, I don't know. There's not very many, things to look forward to in Chicago, but him and Kobe White, I think, will be really fun together. that's about it. So
Yeah, I mean, you really wish this roster wasn't a complete joke. I mean, Giddy, Buzelis, Asonge, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic should be like a really fun starting lineup that's not going to be good, but will be fun to watch. But you just know like Kevin Herter is going to start and Isaac Coro might start and whatever. Like the Bulls should just build around Buzelis. Whatever he is right now, he's the guy. I like Giddy fine. I shouldn't say that. I guess there's like he's like problematic or something. I don't remember. But you know, the thing with Buzelis for me has always been, and a part of me looks back, I'm like, I should have had him one. Like I had Collier one, and Collier had a fine rookie season, and I still think Collier is going to be a good NBA player. Well, actually, we'll talk about him before we move on. I should probably talk about the guy I had number one, and I believe you were pretty high on him too. But the thing with Buzelis is always just there's just this natural kind of funk and rhythm and flow to how he plays, and was pretty young. He has this natural athleticism, this some touch, some weird biomechanics that led to advantage creation, and you saw all of that in their flashes last year. He's the question for me is this guy who's going to be a star, or is this a guy who's going to be a kind of rounding things out type of four, where he's like, again, my favorite individual actual skill of his was his secondary rim protection. What made him a great prospect was that he could maybe shoot and he could maybe dribble and he could maybe make decisions and he could, be a cutter and do all these, like he's versatile as a prospect. How versatile he will be as a player to me is still a question. But obviously there's some great, again, the fact that as a rookie, and again, single season shooting in the NBA can still be somewhat fluky, but he shot 36% on 3.3 attempts. Per 36 minutes, he was taking 6.3 3-point attempts. Like, that's a really good number for a rookie guy who's one of his big questions was, can he shoot? If he can shoot, he's a good closeout attacker. Like, he has enough handle to do that. He can probably be a pretty versatile like DHO operator, running some actions in that way. Like, I wish the team around him made more sense, but if it's me, if I'm the Bulls, I'm giving him the ball as much as possible this year. I want him and Giddey to get out and run. And when it comes to the half court, Buzelis gets the ball when he wants it. Like, I'm playing him 35 minutes and I'm figuring out what he is. Because I think right now he's already on the path where at least he is a rotation player. He's 6'10", making shots at a good enough level with some ability to attack and dribble, who can run in transition, is going to be a good offensive forward with some defensive potential and a single good defensive skill. Now, his block rate, I don't think was crazy. He had a 4.3 block rate, actually, for a 4 is pretty good. So I'll give that to him. Good, one real solid defensive skill. Man, I don't know. Like, I think I probably should have had him one. That's kind of my takeaway. I thought he was the most impressive rookie. I know you mentioned Edie. We'll get to him in a second. But do you have anything else on Buzelis? If not, let's move on to Isaiah Collier before we.
Yeah, let's talk Collier, because Buzelis is awesome, but Collier, I think, has a longer discussion.
Isaiah Collier is so interesting because I think I probably oversold him to myself a little bit as I look back. And I say this with him being on my favorite team and having had a good rookie season. I thought he was the best pick in the draft. Obviously, I had him number one. He did only have a 45.9 effective field goal rate. He only averaged 8.7 points, but he broke the Jazz record for assists by a rookie in a season. He had, averaged 6.3 assists per game. He had per 36 minutes, it was 8.7 assists and 4.1 turnovers. So a little bit over a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He looked like the type of advantage creator and passer you want. The question, which is interesting because his passing was not always something that was certain. If you go back and you listen to how a lot of people talked about Collier, they loved the advantage creation, but they weren't sure about the passing. They weren't sure about that part of it. Now, and they were also not sure about the shooting, and that's part of why he fell. And there's some off the court intel, and he did only shoot 24.9% from three. He took 2.4 per game. Like he was trying to take them. The concern is the shooting. It is. It's just the truth. Can he be a good enough shooter to play on the floor if he's not like some superstar point guard? Because I don't think he's that. I don't think he's so good as a downhill driver and passer that he's like this like all time. The guy I would compare him to right now, honestly, is Ricky Rubio. Like he doesn't have the same type of flash as Rubio, but like he's that same type of like, man, you just some of the passes he makes are just really interesting. Like he is always drawing two as a driver. He's really good at finding his spots and angles, even though he's not a good shooter right now. But Ricky Rubio eventually had to become a good shooter to play on good teams. Can Collier do that is a big question. And this Jazz team is weird. It's a weird context for him. Like, is he going to start? Is Kyle Filipowski going to be his big running mate? Like, or Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen going to be the guys? Like, I just don't know. Like, this is a team that could put a lot of shooting on the floor and give him space for pick and rolls and even pick and pops and stuff. He could play like I think this is a guy that needs to play in kind of an up-tempo scheme, but also sometimes he likes to be kind of deliberate and take his 10 dribbles and, slow the game down some. Like, I don't know. He's really interesting. I think I was too high on him. I do. Like, even after 1 year and again, a pretty good rookie season, for what it's worth. But I do think I was probably too high on him to have him at 1 and even to have him in that top tier. Like, I look back on it now and I'm like, Matas, Reed, and Sar are just better bets at guys to be really like high level rotation players. And I should have had those guys above him and Collier down in that tier with Tyson and Daron Holmes and those guys. But it's undeniable to me that there's something here. And the question is, can it wiggle its way into being a star, or is it more of a, man, there's going to be some give and take, some push and pull, and he's going to be like an okay starting point guard, high level backup point guard type guy, like the Tyus Jones to Ricky Rubio to I'm struggling to think of like the really high level also to Tyrese Halliburton in a weird way, spectrum, right? Like, where is he going to end up landing on that is a real question. Still a great pick at 29. This is, I think, a guy that's an NBA player, but I don't know. I've had kind of some weird reactions kind of looking back on who he was and who he is now. Coop, where are you at with Collier after his rookie season?
I think the weird thing with Collier is that he feels really textbook in a lot of ways. Is like, oh, this is like a good point guard prospect, but there almost like aren't any like really like I think kind of your struggle to come up with a high end point guard comp for him is kind of emblematic of how I feel about him, because every single good point guard in the league is super special in one way at least, most likely 2 or 3. There's the difference between the 2 best point guards in the league, Shea and Luka. They do the same thing, but they're completely different in the way they get to it. And there's nothing like, they're almost completely different. And I really just kind of worry that Collier does not have any special. I don't think the handle is particularly special. I think it's good. I don't think the scoring is particularly special. I think it's fine. He was really inefficient. He's a small guard. He gets a little bit of a pass there. And I worry that a lot of the passing was just like, kind of, he was the only guy on the team who could dribble. And he just got the Jazz into their sets, and Will Hardy's a good coach. And some of that is obviously that he has a ton of downhill gravity because he can get downhill, and the Jazz have a pretty spaced floor, and they really thrive off of these like, oh, hey, KJ Martin, go cut. Oh, hey, Lauri Markkanen, go run out to the three-point line, and then there's a huge gap, and then Walker Kessler will fill it in semi-transition, right? Like, there's all these really easy opportunities that he was always good at, like, really exploiting. But he's not at, like, a Harden, Trae Young level of, I'm going to exploit you with just my eyeballs. I'm going to make an easy shot out of nothing using just, like a slight tense of my body. He doesn't have that kind of special creation that you have to be this kind of really high level exploiter. And I just really worry there's not that much special there. Even though there's obviously something. I think if he could be like a slightly better Tyus Jones, Tyus Jones has stuck around for a long time. He's not my favorite player in the world, but if this is a guy who's more athletic and tries harder than Tyus Jones, that's a really good player. I still think there's worlds where he's a good player, and at 29, a great pick. But yeah, 4 on my board. I mean, I just don't really remember what the special I saw there was. And that's become such a key part of my philosophy in the past, 2 years since then.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the right way to put it. So no, that was great. All right, let's talk about some guys who we were low on that, or some of us were low on who maybe had pretty good rookie years. And then we'll talk about kind of some cleanup and then we'll pick some all-sophomore teams. Zach Edey. I liked Zach Edey a little bit. I do think that he had exactly the rookie year I basically expected him to have, which is, it was his age 23 season. He scored points. He averaged 9.2 points. He was fairly efficient. 60% effective field goal rate is good. He grabbed some rebounds. Turned the ball over more than he assisted. I still think that he is more of a backup big bet than anything else. He is not some like insane rebounder in terms of rebound rates. 5.5 block rate is not great. 1.2 steal rate is actually like shockingly good for him. Like he had a really good steal rate. He just has good hands and he's big and he can take up some space in the lane. His best skill to me is still his lob catching, not his post up ability. It's the fact that he has this crazy catch radius. He's a really good screener. He's not like an elite like sprint to the top of the rim screener, but he doesn't have to be because he tends to play with guys that are going to try and get downhill and occupy that big and want to throw him that pass late, which is good. I do think that schemes are going to catch up with him a little bit this year. I kind of expect a little bit. I don't want to say a sophomore like slump. I think he's going to just kind of maintain this path. I think whoever we see this sophomore year is probably pretty close to who he is. Again, I still don't see all-star here. I think the truth is if we were going to see all-star type, we would have seen that pretty early with him. But what I do think he is a solid big. And I think he could probably start. I still don't think he's like a starter. Which again, in some ways is not bad for the 9th overall pick, right? Like this is a round where like a Jonas Valanciunas gets picked or a Nikola Vucevic gets picked. And Vuce obviously made an all-star game, but was super overpaid and has only been that good for little stretches of time. I don't think Edey is – I think Edey is hit the path to being a top 30 center in the NBA, and that's fine. I had him at – where did I have him at? I had Zach Edey at 24. I still kind of stand by that. He is going to be better than the 24th best player, and I should have had him over the likes of a Dalton Connect or a Tyler Smith. Like, Tyler Smith is just bad. Like, I just missed on him. Like, I just don't think he's any good. I should have had him over those guys. But I don't think I would bring myself to say, even though he might have a better career than any of these guys individually, I don't think I would say it would have been good process for me to say I would have taken him over a Tristan Silva or a Ryan Dunn or even a Pacome Dadier. Like, I still think he's quite that level of value add. Like, and at a certain point when you're talking about drafting these marginal centers, it's like whatever. Again, if he's the backup big on a championship team, that tends to change perception. But does that mean he was ever a top 20 big, like top 15 big? I don't really see that with Edey. So I'm fine with having him 24. Coop, are you like, did his rookie season change how you felt about your own rankings of Edey at all?
I think you had like a come to Jesus moment with Zach Edey. Am I remembering that correctly, or is that me?
I did a little bit where when I watched him, I said, "Oh, the skill isn't the post scoring; it's the lob catching."
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of.
Because even 24, like that felt really high for where my expectations of where I was going to have Zach Edey was.
Yeah, I ended up with him at 23, so I'm trying to remember exactly what happened that cycle because that was a weird one. If Zach Edey can be Jumbo Gortat, that's a really good player, and that's in a class where you just kind of want. I think, if he can really figure out the screening, the rebounding, the small stuff, and you could still use him as this cool offensive player, makes up for the defense. Maybe he's not going to play 30 minutes a night or even 25 in a playoff game, but if you can throw him out there and he can set awesome screens for a healthy jaw and take up a ton of space and be cool and be, the 25th best big in the league, that's probably worth that pick. Especially if you are like pretty sure that he was going to be that. Like, he was always a guy who you knew what you were getting to some degree. I don't think there was like some star and ceiling, and that was not really a world. If you get a safe guy at 9 or 10 or whatever, you're happy with that. I mean, I think the Grizzlies probably could have swung because they were not nearly where they thought they were as far as their roster, and we've seen that kind of play out this offseason. But a lot of that's due to health. So we'll see. I feel like we have to talk about Kel'el Ware. If you want to jump in, if you have some. Okay.
No, all I was going to say, though, is I still think we're going to look back and say taking Edey over Buzelis was, like, insane. But yeah, Ware, rookie season, had a good one, I guess. Started 36 games for the Heat for a team that was kind of trying to win. 59.2 effective field goal rate, was one of the more efficient rookies. Shot 31.5% on 1.7 3-point attempts, 9.3 points. Had some advanced stats. Really good defensive rebound rate, 27.5. 60.3 true shooting is good. 10.4 turnover to 6.5 assist rate is not good. 4.8 block rate is solid, not great. 1.4 steal rate is good. This is a guy a lot of people are high on. Like, I think there's a lot of people that are saying this is like he's better than Alex Sarr. He's gonna have a better career than Alex Sarr. I was very low on Ware, and too low. Like, for what it's worth, like too low, already too low. I had him at 37. Even if he flames out in the next 3 years, like, that was probably too low, because that's not, like, he is clearly a better prospect than that. And so the process was not great there. But I do wonder, Coop, what's your takeaway from Ware's rookie year? Do you think he's being oversold right now?
It's exactly what I thought of him as a prospect, which is this is Hassan White, Christian Wood, guys who I have called the best, worst players in the NBA. Just like guys who will put up stats, and Ware will put up good stats once every 7-8 games, and he'll drop a 20 and 15, and it's like, oh my god, he's killing. And it's like, oh, he's playing a team who's bench big, his foot exploded, and so they're playing the third stringer. Like, oh, he dominated Quinton Post in the pick and roll. Awesome. Like, that's like, am I supposed to be so, like, that's good. That's a good thing to do, and that's something that I underrated, because being able to be a bum slayer in the regular season is good. That's a valuable thing for teams to have. Not every night are you going to be able, like, some nights Bam Adebayo is going to miss all his stupid floaters from the free throw line. And the fact that he can do that and do cleanup duty is valuable to some degree. I had him too low. I don't even want to say where I had him, because it's embarrassingly low, outside of the first round, outside of the top 40, because I was traumatized, and I still am to some degree. But seeing star end outcomes in these guys, it's the same story over and over again. I mean, how many of the guys that we talked about in our redrafts is it just, oh wow, he could put up a 20 and 10 every 10 nights, and it's like, I don't care, because then he's going to give me 6 on 10 shots, and he's not going to try defensively because he's not locked in. He doesn't have the field, and he doesn't set screens, and he doesn't try on defense unless he's like going up for a crazy block. It's just, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep like having to try and defend myself against these types of players who are not, in my mind, winning basketball players. And hopefully Ware changes my mind, and playing with Bam all the time makes him, a winner. But I just don't see it.
All right, Coop, I'm going to read you a rookie year stat line from someone who came up in one of our recent redrafts. And I want you to see if you can tell me who it is, because I think it's kind of similar to Ware. And obviously, stat line comparison is not everything. I will say that Ware is in a much better system than this guy. But he started 39 games, played about 21.4 minutes, 58.8% true shooting, 7 points. His block rate was 3.8, so a little bit lower, but a similar steal rate, similarly super low assist rate, even lower turnover rate. 10.5 turnover rate. Not as dominant a rebounder, only a 16.6 defensive rebound rate. Who do you think this guy is?
Can you tell me his 3-point percentage?
I don't think he attempted a three.
Is it
Which is
Jahlil
obviously
Okafor?
nope. It's Willie Cauley-Stein.
That was my next guess. That was actually my next guess.
I don't think that Ware is Willie Cauley-Stein. Obviously, the shooting element, being a better rebounder, matters. I still think Ware is a bad defensive player. That was always my concern with him. I thought he was soft. I thought the defense, the shot blocking was super overrated. It was he was not a deterrent, and I still don't believe in Ware defensively. I think that he was covered up a lot by Bam. A lot of his rebounding is Bam was the guy who would be in help, and he just got to go clean up the glass. I don't think he can switch particularly well. I think Ware is probably going to be a good offensive center in the league. Like Coop said, a 20-10 guy. I think there's a guy who's going to really struggle in the playoffs. And I'm not going to get over my skis upset about, quote unquote, missing on a guy who is not meaningfully impacting playoff games. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will. Obviously, like I was talking about earlier with Sarr, there is something to be said for stretch, versatile offensive bigs being valuable. But I think Ware is like a horrendous decision maker. And I'm just not sure that's going to change. And like that is the difference between a stretch big derogatory and a stretch big compliment is, can you make decisions too? Like Miles Turner, not like some like high level passer or anything, but he can make decisions at this point in his career. Kristaps Porzingis can make decisions, right? Can pass a little bit, even though most of the time he just wants to do his little turnaround fade stuff at the elbow, whatever. Can Ware make decisions at any point? I'm just not sure. I just don't. I think the feel is super low. You've never heard good things about the focus and the intensity and the ability to learn and get better. He still feels like a very similar guy to me from his senior year of high school. I just think Dana Altman was less willing to put up with this shit than Mike Woodson. I hope he proves me wrong, like with all these guys, but whatever. Let's talk about another miss in Jared McCain. And I think this is really the last quote unquote miss we have to talk about, because we did already kind of talk about Steph Castle and the rest of the guys. I still think there's a lot to be written. But Jared McCain had a really good rookie year in the 23 games he played. He averaged 15.3 points on 55.3 effective field goal rate, shot 38.3% on 5.83 threes per game. Wasn't all like a crazy assist rate or turnover guy. He was just kind of average. He was more of a scorer, even though he's point guard sized. I think the question for me, Coop, is how real do you think those 23 games were? What do you think of McCain at this point? And how does that kind of reflect back on your evaluation of him?
I kind of worried that he was just like got into a hot streak and came out gunning early, and the scouting report wasn't out on him. I don't know if it's like, oh, he really came out and destroyed my expectations that he can do stuff other than shooting. And it's like, no, he kind of just shot the ball really well. And he did some more creation than I thought he would. There was some off the dribble stuff, and we didn't really talk about stuff like that. We kind of just saw him as an off ball shooter. But I do just kind of worry that he's still just like a shooter who got hot at the right time. I'm going to see him a lot in person this season. I'm going to go to Sixers games and enjoy watching him. And I'm excited for that because I really enjoy his game, and I really want to get a true feel. But I don't see like, oh, this guy's like obviously got like the star end outcomes that we all missed on. And it's just, he's a shooter. If he adds more than the shooting, and the shooting becomes something that he can then build on to really incorporate some playmaking and really add like a driving counter game and add more counters to his drives because his gravity is so good, then we're talking about somebody who's more than just Seth Curry. But I do worry that he's just like a guy who got hot at the right time. And it wasn't enough time to really dissuade me from thinking that.
Yeah, to be honest, like like the thing I missed on is he's just higher feel and the handle is a little better than I thought. Which is good, right? Like, and he's been opened up, like his type of athleticism opens up a little bit more in NBA spacing. The 1 foot burst with the strong shoulders is like a good combination for these small guys to. In college, it doesn't work as well because college is a little bit more about your ability to create space. It's a little bit more east-west. And it's also a lot more reliant on 2 foot finishing, like being tight in the lane, being athletic enough off 2 feet, which McCain really isn't. But high school, excuse me, the NBA is a little bit more open, and so the 1 foot athleticism can kind of pop more. And I think that showed at times. Like I think McCain, I missed on McCain in that I had him at 35, and he's certainly a top. He should have been in that at least in that mid first group, but I'm still not sure he's the best prospect on his college team. Like I do think people were writing some checks a little bit early on him. Obviously, it sucks that he's injured. This is a guy I want to root for, but he's also old. This is going to be his age 21 season, and it's almost his age 22 season. He's not he was not a young rookie. He's not a young player for his age, like for his grade. Like he's kind of old. He's still not like a point guard. If he's CJ McCollum, how high do you take CJ McCollum? This is a discussion we've had. We took Brandon Ingram at 11 in our redraft in 2017. Like I still think there's a little bit of that. Now he's smarter and he's tougher than some of those other like shot creator, bucket getter types. But like, I don't think he's such a good defender. I don't think he's such a good, passer. Like I do think he's kind of a specific fit. Now, I actually think he's pretty similar to Reed Shepherd, to be honest. Like I still think I prefer Reed defensively by a solid enough margin that there's a difference, but that's really like the pathway he's on, which is maybe he's more of a transition point guard, or he'll do some stuff as like a scorer in the half court, but he's not really your point guard, but he probably has to be the smallest guy in your lineup most times. And I do worry about, like, with the Sixers, like, what does that look like when you have Tyrese Maxey, now you have VJ Edgecombe, you have Quentin Grimes, like, what's going to give here with this Sixers team? And with McCain being injured now for another stretch, like, I do worry for him a little bit. So I think that's kind of it for, like, the misses. Like, I don't think we need to spend any time on Oso Ighodaro. Donovan Clingan had the most Donovan Clingan rookie season. It was exactly what we expected. I feel great about having him at 12. Like, yeah, he's a perfect 12th overall pick. He goes 7, but like, I just the guys I want to talk about briefly, and we'll try and go quick on this, and then we'll talk about an all second team. We could talk about Keyshawn George as a mixed Coop if you want, but no. I want to talk about Jonathan Mobo, Kyle Filipowski, Johnny Furphy, and Jalen Wells. These were guys that we were fairly high on, I think. So going through this, so I was very high on Furphy, and so were you, I believe. I had Furphy at 9. You had him really high. I had Mobo at 11.
I had him at like 9, 10.
Yeah. I had Jalen Wells at 22, and I had Kyle Filipowski at 10. Like, these were all guys we were very high on. Have any of them done anything where you would move up? They would move up your board, they would move down your board, or do you just feel like pretty happy with your overall evaluations of them? These were guys that fell into the second round that we loved, loved. Like I was very, very high on Johnny Furphy, and I still think there are pathways to stardom with Johnny Furphy that not a lot of guys in this class have. I think we could absolutely be looking back in 10 years and say Johnny Furphy, top 5 player from this class. Jalen Wells, I don't think that's quite true. Jonathan Mobo, I don't think that's quite true. Filipowski, maybe, but like, are there any of those 4 guys where your evaluations specifically have changed or altered?
I think I would have Filipowski the highest out of those guys, and I think I had him the highest. I did have him the highest out of those guys. I'd probably move him up to around 5 or 6 on my board. I'm even higher on Filipowski. I think just the transformative power of truly skilled big man big men has really grown in my mind. And I think I really slept on Filipowski because I hated him because he's a dickhead who eliminated my team from March Madness. But he's an incredible basketball player. He can really handle, and I think that also the the value of bigs who can really handle, really pass, really score, really shoot has just even gone up since we talked about him as a prospect. You know, we've seen like real offensively skilled big men just become so much more valuable on teams like the Thunder, on teams like the Pacers, on teams like the Celtics. You know, these guys, these really good teams really need offensively slanted big men who can actually do stuff. I really like him. I mean, Mobo, I just wish he could have been more efficient last season. I think playing on a bad Raptors bench, he was still impressive. He still really hustled. I think he was really good. I'd probably be slightly lower on him. I didn't watch any Furphy. I don't feel any differently about Furphy than I did before. And
what were your thoughts on Furphy before? Remind the viewers, because you and I ended up both pretty high on it, if I recall.
I ended up with
he
him
barely
at 13.
played last year for what it's worth.
Yeah, just a solid shooter and good athlete and really good closeout guy, right? Just kind of this like ideal off-ball scoring wing, and I think we thought he was a really solid driver and scorer as like an off-ball guy. Just kind of knew how to fill, knew where to be, young, tall, athletic. He could get up really high. He was really good at all the small shooter stuff. I like Furphy. I'd probably stick with him exactly where I had him. I would be higher on Wells, I think. I know he kind of fell off a little bit down the stretch of the season, but a lot of that is just, it's really hard. You know, playing as many minutes as he did and being a really good player as a rookie, to go from college to the NBA, playing that many more games is really, really, really hard. I think with a proper off season where he knows the load and the team knows what they want from him, I really love that kind of guy, who can really show up, hustle, can guard basically, all your point of attack guys that are, shorter than 6'5", and can shoot the ball, can play smart off-ball offense. I really like Wells, and I think just the fact that, to me, I know he's a good basketball player. I watched him in the first half of the season multiple times, and I know that's a good basketball player and will continue to be one. That is so much more valuable than a lot of the guys, like even more than Furphy, who it's like, I liked him more as a prospect, but I'm not sure that Furphy is like a good NBA player yet. The fact that I'm so set on Wells being a good NBA player is just so impressive for him as a prospect to me. Where are you at with those guys? Do you still have the same order, or
I probably would still have the same order. Maybe Wells ahead of Mobo at this point. I'm gonna let my nuts hang with Furphy. Like I really believe in this guy. In the preseason game this week, 12 points in 20 minutes, got to the free throw line for 6 attempts, one of 2 from 3. Like, I just think now he turned the ball over 4 times. Like, I'm not saying he's great. I think he's going to end up playing a lot this year. Like, McConnell is hurt. Halliburton is hurt. They're going to be running out. Pascal Siakam is going to do everything he can to get this team to the play-in. But they're going to be desperate for guys who can do stuff with the ball. And Furphy has this weird, like, funk to him as a ball handler running pick and roll and stuff. Like, there's just something there, dude. Like, obviously, like the dunks and the aura moments and whatever. But I think there is a certain level of athletic flow to him where he can just access certain things that not a lot of like 6'8" guys can. And he was also making shots, and he's also, now he was not a great shooter. Like, he had the one really cool dunk in summer league, but I think he shot really poorly. Last year he barely played. I understand all that. I still think this is one of the better remaining star bets from this class, and I think he's going to play a lot this year, and I think he's going to go through some growth. This is not a guy who needs to figure it out now. Like, this is not a Jalen Tyson. This is his age 21 season so he's not super young, don't get me wrong, but he's got a little bit more runway. I would say he's pretty young in basketball years, right? Like, this is a guy that I still really believe in. Filipowski, I love. I just don't know what it's going to look like this year. Like, and he's another guy where I do have my is he Domantas Sabonis worries. But he is so like he can actually shoot, which Domantas can, I believe. For what it's worth, Filipowski this last year I thought had a really excellent rookie season. I thought, for the time he was given, which was not a ton, he was not, he started 27 games. A lot of his minutes came down the stretch. 9.6 points, 57.6% effective field goal rate. About an even assist to turnover is a worry, but he rebounded okay. Was not a great block or steal guy. There's still some question: is he a 3 or is he a 4? But a thing that stands out: he took 3.1 3-point attempt, shot 35%. If he can play the 4, and do enough, his feet don't move great, but I think they could move well enough for him to play the 4. Honestly, that's a valuable guy. I'm still not sure if and what they would look like in terms of star outcomes for Filipowski, but I do think he's just sneakily a really valuable 4 or 5 guy in the NBA, somebody who can play both positions and do a little bit of everything on both ends. It doesn't take anything off the table. It's just a really high level guy in that way. So I believe in him. This Jazz roster is so weird. I don't know what it's going to look like this year, but I'm hopeful for his sake. Momo is the guy I'm most concerned about, just because Jesus Christ, this Raptors roster is just a sight to behold. He actually had a pretty good rookie season, but he didn't shoot. And I still think there's a good contingent of people that are oh man, he needs to shoot. Honestly, to play for the Raptors, he probably does, because I'm guessing Colin Murray-Boyles passes him in terms of importance. I love his defense still. I thought he did in the time he played, which he played 63 games. He started 18. He was not a 0-minute guy or anything. In the times he played, he 2.1 steal, 2.5 block rate. He guarded, but he couldn't score. And then also the assist to turnover being basically even for him is not great. I just don't know what his role looks like. I want to love him. Wells, I'm still high on Wells, and I believe I'm with you. He's an NBA player, and he's a good NBA player. I do think there's still some question. The real question is, how good of a shooter is he? Because he really tailed off towards the end of the year. On 5 attempts per game, he ended up only shooting 35%. Yeah, there was a time in the year where he was shooting 40%, and then he really cooled off. If he's closer to that 40%, if he's a 38% shooter, he's a starting shooting guard in the league for a long time, because he can really defend. He's smart. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton. Again, he started to turn the ball over a little bit more down the stretch, and he can guard point guards, and he can guard 2s, and he can't like some 3s he can't guard. He's not crazy versatile defensively, but he can really guard 1s, which is good. He can get through screens on and off ball. He can impose his will a little bit. He can test their shot. He is a really good guy in my mind's eye to guard someone like a Jalen Brunson in time, where it's that's a point guard that's really relying on their shot making. We're going to put this wing that can really contest his shots on him. But the concern is, what level of shooter is he? Because he's in no other way is he an offensive star. He's a 3-and-D guy in the truest sense. And so I can only get so high on him. But I do think that he is, an NBA player. Whether or not he's going to be closer to 8 in a redraft or 15 in a redraft is going to depend on just how good of a shooter he is, in my opinion. So are there any other guys you want to talk about before we kind of get to some all rookie teams? And then maybe we'll do, if there's, but are there any other guys that popped to your head that you just want to kind of rapid fire off right now that you're watching closely, Coop?
Obviously, Jamal Shed, my favorite player of all time. I had him at 20. Cougars legend. I think this is a guy who's dear God, please let him play more than Emmanuel Quickly. Please let him play more than RJ Barrett. Too bad he's buried on the Raptors, where he will never see the light of day. There's some inefficiencies, but this is a guy who creates legit advantages and really is one of the elite point of attack defenders in the league, in my opinion. A little older. I just buy what he does. And guys like that are hard to find. They're a lot rarer than you would think. Also, Adem Bona, legit good center. who was not good as a freshman in college. Great sophomore season. People liked him less, even though he was better. It was really concerning in that way. Just really, I hope he's healthy, because when he was healthy for the Sixers, he was awesome. Other than that, Quentin Post can shoot. So he's a 7-footer who can shoot, and that's cool. Those are kind of my rapid fire guys. You have any guys before we move on?
Shout out Quentin Post. That's a great poll. Dayron Holmes and Devin Carter are two guys I'm going to be watching really closely. I was really high on them. Dayron, the question is he going to have any more lift? He was like, for someone who dunked all the time, he was never like a crazy, like just like high flyer. Tears his Achilles. Like, is he going to have any lift off the floor to be a center? He shot the ball a shit ton in summer league. Like, so that's kind of an interesting guy for me. Devin Carter, I love. He's just kind of in no man's land right now, because now he's still on the Kings, but it's not the same front office that drafted him. So I'm concerned for him, but I love Devin Carter. I think he should be a guy. The big issue his rookie season is, he got hurt and he barely played. And then he didn't shoot very well from three. He has to shoot because he's not a point guard. And the defense is good, but it's not so good that he's, can get away with not making shots from the outside. But I love him. I was probably a little too high on him. I should have had like a Filipowski above him. But I at a certain point, like, his game was just too fun for me. Rob Dillingham, I think, is maybe just bad. I think Rob Dillingham is probably bad. And I was probably too high on him to have him at 14. Someone I actually kind of prefer, even though he's like a million years older, is KJ Simpson, who's I think still on the Hornets. I hope he plays this year. Ryan Dunn, I was really happy with my Ryan Dunn eval. Interested to see if he can get back to the type of shooting he had at moments at the beginning of last year. He was always a if he shoots guy. He blocked less shots for the Suns. I think that's less because of his actual shot blocking ability, and more because they were desperate for someone who could guard on the perimeter, so he couldn't do any low man stuff. But, love him. Feel very vindicated about the Dalton Connect fading on my part. But no, I think that's everybody. Why don't you talk quickly about Huck Porty, and then we're gonna make some all soft. Oh, actually, one last guy that I'm interested to monitor: Isaac Jones, another WSU alum. But I think someone who is going to get some tick for the Kings this year. They don't have a lot of backup center play after trading away JV. And I think he is someone who plays really hard and can really rebound and can kind of do some dribble handoff passing stuff. So interested to see if things click for him. I kind of like him a little bit. Why don't you talk about Huck Porty, and then we can do all sophomore teams.
Yeah, Huck Porty, I just wanted to talk about because he tries hard and he dunks and he runs and he grabs rebounds. He's a pretty solid second or third string rolling big man. And I think that there's a world where he plays a pretty decent amount if Mitchell Robinson gets hurt again this season. He was good in limited minutes. He didn't average very many points, career high of 9 points, career high of 5 rebounds. He didn't play a ton, but sometimes you just need a guy who can come in and give you some effort in limited minutes. And I think that's Huck Porty. All sophomore, sophomore of the year, I'm going to go with Reed Shepherd. I'm gonna go a little homery here. I think that he's someone who, despite the fact that he was ass as a rookie, still was like a winner and tried hard and could make passes and took the right shots. And that gave me a lot of confidence in him. And I really think that he's looking like a new guy already. He looked like a completely new player in summer league in preseason. I really have always bought what he's done, with the fact that I buy Sarr a bit less. I don't think Holland's going to get the opportunity, and I don't think he's as efficient a scorer as Reed is, even if I maybe, I kind of a toss-up who I prefer day-to-day, long-term between the two of them. I think Reed's just so primed for such a great sophomore campaign. Even if he becomes the bench guy, then he gets to do more point guard stuff and more passing. I just don't see how anybody really passes him unless he just falls off a cliff or gets hurt or something like that.
My sophomore of the year, and I will have Reed all sophomore first team, but my sophomore of the year is Buzelis. Now he's going to contribute to winning less than Reed. It would not shock me if Matas Buzelis averages like 22.5 points per game this year on like okay efficiency. On not a good team, like the Bulls are going to be bad, but not like the worst team in the world. Like I just think that this is a guy who is primed to be in a spot where things are about him a little bit more. The Bulls are going to play really up tempo, really fast, which is going to play into his hand. And then in the half court, they don't have a ton of half court creators. I think they're going to be running a lot of shit for Matas. Like I just think he's a great bet here. Obviously, was someone who I said, like, to me he was the most impressive rookie. And so, I think this kind of just continues on that trend for me. I'll just go through my all sophomore first team, and then you can go. So I'm going to go Reed Shepherd. I'm going to go Matas Buzelis. I echo everything Coop said. I do think there's a world that Reed just has like, I hate to say this, has like a horrendous sophomore year if he doesn't shoot well enough, and then all of a sudden we're talking about some very different things. But I still believe. I think Alex Sarr is going to be really bad this year, to be honest. As much as I want to put him up there. I'm going to put Donovan Clingan on here because I think that I think this Portland Trailblazers team is going to be really good. And I think that not really good. The Portland Trailblazers defense is going to be really good. And I think he's going to be a big part of it. And I think they're going to push for like a top 8 seed. And if they're the 8th seed and Donovan Clingan starts 74 games, like, yeah, that's an all rookie or an all sophomore team type of guy. After that, it does get tough for me. Like, those 3 guys I'm really sure on. Other than that, like, I'm gonna pull a Coop. I think Ron Holland has a really good sophomore year. I just think that this is a Pistons team that needs someone else to handle the ball some. Cade was remarkably healthy last year. If Cade gets hurt for a stretch, like, Ron's gonna have the ball. Like, I just think he can do it somehow. Like, I don't even know what it is. I just think there's a part of me that's like, yeah, like Holland just has some of that to him offensively. I still think he's not a great defensive player, but I like Ron Holland, and I think he's gonna have a good year. And the last guy I'm gonna go with is again, kind of letting let my personal rankings show out. I'm gonna go Jalen Tyson. I believe really strongly in Tyson. I think he's probably going to be the most. Him and Shepard are the bets for the 2 guys that are going to most impact winning this year. Like, on good teams, they're going to be a part of things and help teams take that step. I think Tyson is maybe even more primed to do it than Reed because he's in a role that's maybe a little bit more comfortable. But that's my 5 for the first team. The second team is going to be really hard to come up with 5 more that I think are going to be actually good. But Coop, who's your all sophomore first team?
Our teams are pretty similar. Reed, Ron, Matas, the first 3. The last 2, I'm kind of alarmed. I didn't think that we'd be so different. I have Jalen Wells. I think this is a guy who I really believe in. I think really so much of him down the stretch fading was just exhaustion, and he was overtasked for a rookie, and it just happens. But he's already hit the wall, and you've seen what he can do. And I'm really excited for his sophomore campaign. I think the Grizzlies are really excited for him. I think he's going to start. I think he's going to do serious stuff for them. He's part of why they were so comfortable moving off of Bane. And then I don't know where the minutes come from because the Jazz are a mess. But if Filipowski does not put up enough stats and does not play enough to make a theoretical all-sophomore team, I'm going to be pissed off. Like, you're going to play Taylor Hendricks, 45 minutes a night, and we're not going to find the minutes for the guy who's been your best young prospect for, as long as you've been tanking that you've drafted. Like, what are we doing? Even if Filipowski plays a ton of minutes and you just figure out that he's Sabonis, I would much rather do that than maybe Taylor Hendricks will be, that guy, and he's going to shoot the ball cool and block a few shots and be moderately interesting while not having star end outcomes. I'm going to be kind of pissed off. So that's my first team. I'm going to move over to my second team if you're fine with that. Start of my second team, I have Zach Edey. I think this is a guy who I think can set some screens, grab some rebounds, can contribute to winning. Would have been my second vote for Rookie of the Year. I would have had Wells at 1. I know he kind of faded, but I think that the defense was very real. He played the most winning basketball out of anybody last season. I think he's awesome. I have Edey. I have Jamal Shed. Just another guy who I think is he just has an impact even when the shot's not falling. He can really defend. He can really pass. If the shot can fall at like a league average rate, this is going to be a guy who could get traded to be a starting point guard, in my opinion, for a good team. I have Adem Bona here. I think, we talked a little bit about him. Just love what he does. Devin Carter. I like the defense more than you do, Bryce. And I think he's just a killer. I really think there's a world where he starts for the Kings and could be like a huge deal for them. I don't think there's a world where they're any better than the 12 seed, but if they make the 11 seed next season, it's because Devin Carter is fucking awesome. Right. And then I do have Klingon on my second team. I do worry that it's going to be 18 minutes of awesome basketball where he's just such a killer. And then he's, too fat to play any more minutes. Sorry, that's rude. Too out of shape to play any more minutes. But that's always been the problem. Klingon can come in. He can play good basketball. The offense is not good, and the defense is only good in limited minutes. How much is that guy worth? If he starts for a Blazers team that's the 8th seed, then yeah, I do think that's a guy who could make an all-sophomore first team. I just really think that the Blazers, all the stats point to the fact that they just got really lucky. Teams missed a lot of open threes against them, and that's why their defense was so good. Maybe with Drew, they take a step forward. That offense is awful. Denny Avdia, not that good. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. Shaden Sharp, not that good. Unless Scoop takes the leap somehow and he becomes the guy, I just don't see it for the Blazers because there's nothing there offensively, in my opinion. And you just don't win regular season games without being able to score in some way. And Shaden Sharp also just isn't that good. There's just so much weirdness on this roster, and they got really lucky in the late stages of last season. I just don't buy it in the same way a lot of people do. But I do like Klingon. Klingon is good, just needs to play more minutes. If he could get up to 25 minutes a night, I'd happily, I would be the happiest man in the world.
I mean, he has to. They don't have a choice. Hell or high water, he's going to have to play 25 minutes a night because Robert Williams is not going to be healthy, and they're not going to play Hansen Yang 30 minutes. So I'm interested to see how it works. That's a really interesting team. My second team is going to be comprised mostly of similar guys. Edey, Wells, and Filipowski all make my second team. I don't have much to say else on any of those guys that we haven't said. I'm going to have Collier and Furphy as my other guys that make it. Collier's going to I think he might miss the start of the season. He has a hamstring issue right now. But I think he's going to be the starting point guard for the Jazz. And I don't think the Jazz will be great, but I think he's going to put up stats for whatever that's worth. And then Furphy, again, that's kind of a out on a limb one a little bit, maybe, even though he's had his aura moments. Some other guys, I considered Tristan Da Silva, who I think is going to have to play quite a bit for the Magic, and who I think is good. Ryan Dunn, who I think is good and will play. And then Adem Bona. I seriously considered Adem Bona. I think Adem Bona is going to be a really good backup center this year. To be honest, I still prefer him to Kel'el Ware. That's just that he's exactly how I want my backup bigs to be. And so that's where I'm at. There's a lot of guys obviously we could talk about. We did not have the time to go through all, 80 players on my board or 58 players drafted or whatever. It's just not how it's going to work. But hopefully this was a good kind of wrap up and preview. Okay, we have to talk about one person who we didn't talk about the whole time.
Zachary Risachet.
The first overall pick. Coop, will you tell us your opinions quickly on Zachary Risachet? Actually, I'll give his stats for his rookie season stats. We probably should have at least considered him for all rookie team. He came second in rookie of the year voting. He started 73 games for the Hawks last year. On average 12.6 points on 45.8 35.5, 71.1 shooting splits, 53.7 effective field goal rate. Was fairly efficient overall. 55.8 true shooting is solid. 44.2 free throw rate is, or 3-point attempt rate is good. Did not get to the line a ton, but 7.1 assist rate to a 9.8 turnover rate. It's not great. 1.3 steal, 1.8 block. Like, he wasn't particularly effective, but he's 6'9" and he made shots and he started a lot and played a lot of minutes. How do you feel about Reece Sachet? How did you feel about Reece Sachet last year? Has that changed? We should probably at least have. I still don't know that I'd put him on my all-sophomore team. I would have had him on an all-rookie team, but barely. Like, he's so weird. This is the weirdest number 1 overall pick in recent memory. Where are you at with him right now?
I think if his name was Zachary Richmond and he was American, he's just like the 12th pick. Like, it really is like, I feel like he is the epitome of the meme of like, oh, add an itch to the end of their name and they're incredible. They're a top 5 prospect or whatever. But he's just like, he just shoots. He shoots the ball. He is pretty good at catching and shooting the ball, and he can fill the corners, and he's athletic enough, which I think I kind of underrated. If you're legit 6'9" and actually truly athletic enough to play in the NBA and you can do something, like, I think Reece Sachet is a guy. He's a 6'9", good enough athlete who can shoot and kind of defend. I don't think I underrated that. I think I had Reece Sachet at 15. Maybe I should have had him at like 12, but I don't feel bad about my placement or lack of talking about him at all.
Yeah, I mean, for me with Reece Sachet, I had him at 18, which is too low. I should have had him above Rob Dillingham. I should have definitely had him above Pacome Dadier. Like, I don't know what I was thinking with that one. Tristan Silva, Ryan Dunn, probably too. I probably should have had him at like 13. But I don't know that I would actually get much higher than that. Like, I think he's really simple. He can kind of shoot, but he's not. I don't think he's like an elite shooter. He can take one dribble and make a good decision, which is good. I don't think he's a particularly good defender. I think he's kind of overrated there. I think he's going to play for a long time. And maybe I underrated the defense. Like, I know he won Defense Player of the Year or whatever. And what's his name? Jonathan Gaboni will go on and on about how good the text he got about his defense was or whatever. Like, I'm definitely underrating the fact that he can attack a closeout and he makes quick decisions against closeouts. Like, that's good, but he's not a creator in any way. I don't think he's a great shooter. I actually think there are times where even like the number he shot this year, shooting 35.5% on 4.6 attempts. Like, I think that's closer to who he is than like a 39-40% shooter. If he's going to be taking movement shots or anything, to me, there's like no upside for this guy on either end. Like, he's just like he's not even a connector. He's just like a 3-and-D guy, like, who's big, which is good. Like, can he be a starter on good teams? Yeah, probably. Like, I think he's like probably a slightly better version of like Dorian Finney-Smith, who is just in a situation where he got to be Dorian Finney-Smith earlier in his career. Now he is fairly young. This is his age 20 season, one of the younger guys from this class. That's a great sign. And so maybe the fact that he could score, 12 points on solid efficiency as a rookie, as a 19-year-old in the NBA is probably a good sign. And maybe I'm underrating that. It's like, I don't want to be rude to him. Like, he's probably a top 12 or so guy in this class. But like, I still think I'd probably, looking back, like, I'd probably rather take the bet on Furphy than him. Like, or I'd probably rather take the bet on, Jalen Tyson even. Like, I just, the safety of someone like Reece Sachet is not really, to me, worth that, because that's not what the draft is for, in my opinion. Like, you can get these safe 3-and-D wings in other ways a lot. Like, you're trying to find players who are meaningfully additive on one side of the floor or the other, and I don't know that he is. He's not a stopper. He's not a great rotating defender. He can kind of guard your secondary wings, and he can make shots, kind of, but like, I don't know. But that's about it. Coop, do you have any final remaining thoughts on this draft now that we've finally talked about the number 1 overall pick?
Weird draft. I actually think we're going to look back in a while and say, just talk about how many busts were in this draft, but also how many random guys ended up being, pretty good contributors to decent basketball, at least like played in rotations for a long time. And I'm really excited. I'm excited to see what these guys do this season. I think this is the weakest out of all the classes we've done, but I would not call it like a weak class in a lot of ways. So I'm excited. I hope everyone enjoyed listening. And Bryce, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fellas, make sure you guys tune in next week where we're going to be talking about rookies and some rookie predictions, hopefully with our third member. Could you imagine how long this would have went if we had Stone on this? So next week we might have to come up with a slightly different format. But obviously it was nice to review a little bit too and look back at these guys' rookie season and talk a little bit about how to value a rookie season, which I think is an interesting exercise. And, sometimes the truth is making a board can be such an imperfect science in terms of you're just kind of throwing guys on there, and so much is based in your feelings and emotions in the moment. And part of the problem with having a personal board is that you rarely have the checks and balances that front offices and staffs have to make sure that a decision is sound. And so like you can look back even a year ago, and I'm proud of the work we did on the show. I'm proud of the work I did. Yeah, Pacome Dadier over Zachary Risache is probably stupid. And I still like Dadier fine, but that's I was me being too caught up in a very specific feeling. I think we watched Dadier late in that class, and we watched Risache super early, so it was like a weird kind of push and pull there. And sometimes that's how it goes. And I like looking back and trying to hold myself to account a little bit for stuff like that, but also being like, yeah, I do think Matas Buzelis is that good, and I'm glad that I had him that high, and that's the process of learning and getting better and all that. So I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of a look at that. We're going to try and do a couple more redrafts down the line. We might try and do a 23 and under draft. The last time we did that, it was a few weeks into the season, which I actually kind of liked. I liked having hey, we have some data from this year to see if anyone's really starting to blow up. I think that's a big reason Evan Mobley went third and not fourth, because he would have only fallen one more pick past Stone. That was a fun exercise when we did that last year, and so I'm excited to hopefully do that again. But until next time when we're talking about rookies, this has been the Upside Swings of a Draft podcast. We hope leader ceiling. Thank you.
What the hell? Do you see your screen is purple right now?
Yeah, did I click something? This is really dumb. What happened?
I don't know.
Did I click something? I don't think so. Did you click something?
I don't know. You want me to kick you and then you can come back?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh my God. Bryce turned purple. And Kobe Williams. Or Kobe
White.
Okay, Kobe, wrong W. I'm not putting that in the episode. This is what happens when you're the editor. You get to pick and decide what funny
no
to
kidding.
put in. Yeah, it's awesome.